What is next on the agenda is an overview of MEREDA's legislative agenda. You know, one of the really most important things that we do at MEREDA is advocate for the real estate and development industry in Augusta and sometimes even in the federal government. MEREDA's Public Policy Committee reviews every piece of legislation proposed in Augusta to determine whether they have an impact, positive or negative, on real estate development and ownership, and engages where appropriate to represent our members before the legislature. Many well-intentioned pieces of legislation can have harmful, unintended consequences that our Public Policy Committee analyzes. MEREDA also seeks to introduce legislation each session of the legislature in order to improve the environment for real estate ownership and development. As you know, MEREDA's mission is to promote an environment for responsible development and ownership of real estate in Maine, and our advocacy work provides our members with great value. We have created a strong presence in Augusta, which is driven by a very active public policy committee made up of many members who contribute to MEREDA's legislative efforts. Our public policy committee is fortunate to have first-rate representation in Augusta, spearheaded by Andrea Cianchette and Elizabeth Frazier, our next speakers from Pierce Atwood. Andrea and Elizabeth are first-rate attorneys at Pierce Atwood and MEREDA's Public Policy Council. Thanks to Andrea and Elizabeth's efforts, the efforts of our volunteer Public Policy Committee members, MEREDA has had great success in the legislature and in improving the real estate climate in Maine. Please welcome Andrea and Elizabeth to the stage.
Hey, good afternoon. So I'm Andrea, this is Elizabeth, and this is the moment in this all-day program when you get to learn how you can help MEREDA achieve success in the current legislative session. So listen up. This is the short session. It started just on January 8th with actually a warm greeting by MEREDA in the Hall of Flags. Elizabeth will tell you more about that in a minute. It's due to adjourn on April 15th. About the only day I can think of to look forward to tax day. So the good news for you is that this will mean a couple of short-term assignments for you if you choose to accept them to help MEREDA with its legislative agenda this session. So let's get oriented. Let's see, the big green button. Okay, we heard earlier this morning, MEREDA's mission is to promote an environment for responsible development and ownership of real estate throughout the state. That's the reason that brings this large and diverse group of people together in membership for this association. The Public Policy Committee is charged to pursue a more fair, predictable, and practical policy environment. This year, our committee is pleased to be chaired or co-chaired by Paul Peck and Tiffany Dembowski. Okay, Cianchette was my name once, I get this. It's hard to pronounce. And every summer before the legislative session begins, this committee meets to identify legislation that we can initiate to benefit you, the members. And we work through the fall to get the legislation drafted, sponsored by legislators, and submitted into the session. And then during session, we meet every other week to work on our bills, as well as review this new legislation that comes out and decide what kind of action we might want to take on that. We beat back bad ideas, we promote good ideas. And what's interesting is this is such a diverse group of members, and there are so many dynamics that impact the real estate sector that the substance of the policy work we work on changes almost every session. So if you look historically, over the past 9 years, we have instituted greater predictability with the Informed Growth Act, greater practicality by eliminating full site plan review for minor projects, and by allowing for the grandfathering of certain stormwater systems during project expansions. We've expedited judicial reviews of municipal decisions, and we've simplified local subdivision review. We've also successfully contained increases in fees by the fire marshal and most recently at the DEP for the Voluntary Remedial Action Program. In other words, they came in with proposals for larger fee increases than they ultimately got because we were at the table pushing back to make them at least more reasonable. Last year, we took the offensive to try to repeal a new law that required road disclosures in certain property transactions, commercial property transactions. Well, we didn't get that enacted, but we were at the table because we had that bill in, and we were able to ultimately negotiate a more streamlined requirement. We also corrected an error and defined site plan review in a law that we had passed the year before that removes the need for state subdivision review when a municipality has its own site plan review process. We also last year engaged on administrative changes of MUBEC, and we opposed the MUBEC opt-in stretch code because it will result in a lack of uniformity of codes across the state. That was ultimately enacted, and I think it is likely a sign of things to come, with both the need for the state to update from the 2009 Energy Code that's currently in existence and the Climate Council work that Elizabeth's going to speak to you about in just a moment. I think it's also important to mention that while MEREDA initiated and drove most of the bills I just spoke about, we also enlisted the collaborative support of many other organizations. We appreciate them for that. And frankly, it's that kind of collaboration that helps actually get bills across the finish line under the dome. So this brings us to you and this session and how you can help. We're currently focusing on 2 bills and reviewing another more complicated one. The complicated one is a bill that would allow for commercial property assessed clean energy programs, the nickname of that is CPACE, to finance energy savings improvements through clean energy funds that may loan money at rates lower than commercial rates. The lien on that loan would take priority over all other liens except the municipal tax and utility liens. The commercial lender would have the ability to approve or reject the CPACE loan on that project. Municipalities would need to enact an ordinance to allow for CPACE program in its community. So if you can imagine, with the makeup of this organization, between developers and commercial lenders, we're looking at this and taking a very cautious approach to see if MEREDA can take a position, and if so, what that will be on that legislation. But the other 2 bills in front of us this session are not complicated at all, and we invite your active support, which you will know when and what to do by getting your legislative alert in an email from MEREDA or from Shelley Clark at MEREDA. So LD 1645 would enact a state affordable housing tax credit. MEREDA supported this bill last session, will continue to this session. It actually was enacted in the committee. It was enacted in the House and enacted in the Senate, and it went to the appropriations table because it has a fiscal impact on the state budget as a tax credit bill. The Maine Affordable Housing Coalition is the initiator and driver of this legislation, and we have been there and will continue to be there to support them. So please be on the lookout for an alert from Shelley with direction on how you can contact members of the Appropriations Committee or maybe the Governor's Office, if we can get it that far, encourage them to move the bill forward and sign it into law. We're also working in collaboration with a number of organizations on the historic tax credit. We're working with Maine Preservation, CEI, Grossmart Maine, Portland Landmarks, and others to submit a bill this session to either lift the upcoming sunset on the preservation tax credit, historic preservation tax credit, or to at least extend it out. It currently is due to expire in a couple of years. The Maine law was initially in effect in 2007. It has proven itself to be really helpful in helping revamp abandoned or falling apart buildings that deserve to be preserved in their historical capacities. So currently, we're working with a coalition to raise some funds to pay for an economic impact report so we can inform legislators about the positive impacts this tax credit has stimulated. It's obviously re-enrolled a number of vacant, dormant, or underutilized bills onto much stronger tax rolls in the communities where they are. It's generated sales tax and jobs, indirect and direct, through the construction phase, and it also generates economic activity by virtue of the occupants who are in the building once it's put back into use. So that report will be helpful to us to explain to legislators why they should want to renew the sunset, either extend the sunset on this or lift the sunset altogether, and let's just have this on our books for a good long time. So again, stay tuned for alert from MEREDA on how you can help with that. We're currently trying to get the bill into the session, and we have a couple of ways we're working on to do that. So with this, I want to hand the podium over to my colleague and associate, Elizabeth Frazier, who literally stands by my side, figuratively stands by my side, and she either takes the lead or has my back on all things MEREDA. Elizabeth is going to tell you about the recent Hall of Flags that MEREDA sponsored, a brand new committee that the Board of MEREDA has decided to institute to provide broader benefits and greater benefits to you, the members, and give you a quick overview of the Governor's Climate Council. Over to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Andrea. It was great to kick off the legislative session this year last week with MEREDA's Hall of Flags Day event in the State House on the second floor. We celebrated MEREDA's 35th anniversary and the state of Maine's 200th birthday. You can see we had birthday cake. It was very delicious. And we were very fortunate to have some MEREDA members join us in Augusta to showcase their business. We were also able to display some of MEREDA's notable projects, past winners in the Hall of Flags. Legislators really enjoyed getting a chance to see projects that were in their districts or on display at the State House. So that was a really great event. A big thank you to all the MEREDA members who came and for helping us put a face on commercial real estate development in Maine at the legislature. So in addition to the work we do in Augusta that Andrea told you about, she mentioned that we have a new committee. It is the Local Issues Committee. The committee was founded to allow MEREDA to be nimble and responsive to local policy issues that impact commercial real estate and development. We know that in this sort of day and age, there's a tremendous amount of opposition oftentimes. This committee is here to help us sort of gauge when and how MEREDA could get involved. As a new committee, we're still working out the framework for what that looks like and when and how MEREDA will engage, but we're very much looking forward in the near future to applying that framework and to getting MEREDA involved in some of these local issues that really impact commercial real estate and development. We had our first meeting in October. We're very fortunate to be chaired by Tom Schoening of Drummond & Drummond. And our next meeting is actually next Thursday, so if you have not been and it's something you're interested in, please ask Shelley about it. The Local Issues Committee is also very pleased to announce and to present the Local Issues Committee Developers Toolkit. This is a preview of the toolkit. It is coming soon. The toolkit is designed to help MEREDA members gain the support they need to get their projects passed at the local level. As I mentioned, and we know, there's a great deal more opposition at the local level now often to projects. Developers need to know more than just the local land use approval process. They need to know how to engage with stakeholders, how to present their project to municipal decision makers in a way that garners support, but also addresses and helps ameliorate and offset opposition to the project. The toolkit will provide tips, pro-MEREDA tips, as well as samples and templates, so that you can use the toolkit to apply it to your project in whatever way works best for you. We're very much looking forward to unveiling the toolkit in the spring, so stay tuned for your inbox for more information. So I want to turn now, as Andrea mentioned, to talk to you a little bit about climate change action. As you heard earlier today, the governor has a lot of top priorities. There are really 4 that form the sort of pillars of her legislative priorities. One of them is economic development, which of course you heard a bit about this morning, and climate change. Since you heard Commissioner Johnson speak about the exciting work that's going on in economic development, I'm going to skip over that and take you to a little bit of information about the climate change action. So last legislature, this in 2019, established the Maine Climate Action Council. The council is a 39-member board, which is very large, made up of legislators, individuals from all sectors of the economy, thought leaders, who are coming together in a fact-finding mission to try to figure out sort of what Maine's challenges are to meeting our greenhouse gas reduction goals, which were put also into law last year. And the goal is by 2050 to reduce Maine's greenhouse gas across all Maine economy sectors 80% below the 1990 levels by 2050. There are some interim goals in there, so work is starting to move on this. The Climate Council for the real estate sector is working through the Buildings, Infrastructure, and Housing Working Group, which you see there. That working group has about 15 people on it. It's made up of a variety of people from architects to affordable housing, to engineers. Efficiency Maine is represented, and there are a number of policymakers as well. They are sort of currently getting educated on Maine's housing stock, on our building infrastructure, on how that contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, and what barriers might exist to overcoming that. They are ultimately tasked with coming up with recommendations for mitigation strategies, which include potentially efficiency of existing buildings, better, more energy efficient building practices for new buildings, distributed energy systems, and fuel switching. We do expect that the work of the Climate Council will eventually lead to legislation, potentially rulemaking. So we will continue to keep a close eye on the work that's going on there and follow that for MEREDA and look out for MEREDA's interests as we move through that process, because we do think it's something that will shape policy in the state of Maine for potentially the next few years. And with that, I'm very pleased to be here today. Thank you so much. We're very honored in the work that we do for MEREDA and to be here for all of you today, and we look forward to the very exciting work that we have coming this session. Thank you very much.